It's only these people who write history to please themselves. But history has no favorites. And you see, in spite of the effort made to cover up history, it's still pushing up. Because I believe that our strength comes from our past. That's where our strength is coming from. And if we ignore our past, it will be like a pilot trying to fly without a compass. What's going to guide us? You see? So we need to embrace our past, which will give us the strength to move into the future. And of course, it's not that we slept through history. We were creating and inventing all the time. All the time. There was never a dull moment. I tell you about these elephant hunters who were hunting with bows and arrows. Can you imagine? Now the elephant is a ferocious creature, huge creature which can trample any hunter to death. Now they were only using bows and arrows, and with bows and arrows you had to get very close to this creature who has a very strong sense of smell. So how did they do it? Because there are only two parts of the elephant's body that you can hurt, through the eyes and through the ears. Those are the only two soft spots on the elephant's body. If you shoot the arrow into the belly, you're just wasting your arrows, it won't penetrate. So our forebears came up with two plants, and they mixed them up and pounded them and smeared the whole body, including the nostrils and the ears. Then the elephants couldn't smell them. All they had to do was to prevent the elephant from seeing them, and so they could hide behind the grasses and behind the trees and get very close and then shoot through the eye. Now if I, standing 2 feet away, kill an elephant, and you with a stand gun stand 50 feet, which of the two is the braver, and which of the two is the hunter? I with a bow and arrow, I'm the hunter. Not the one who stands 500 feet and just pulls a trigger and says, I'm a hunter. No, the bold man is the one who was 2 feet away. Let the man fold his gun and get 2 feet to the creature. See whether he can even fire his gun. The elephant will trample on the gun and break it into pieces. So, see, our people are very courageous.
You were talking about medicine too.
Yeah, well, we have a lot of medicines. And some of the medicines actually, our people learned by observing animals treat each other. We have a very powerful snake bite, and the story behind that snake bite, anti-snake bite medicine, is that a hunter, and I know the descendants of this hunter, they live on the Kwao Hills, going to Kumasi, you know, when you get in Koko and you see those rocky mountains up there. And this hunter was in the forest hunting, and he was resting under a tree when he suddenly saw two snakes fighting, and one of them bit the other and it lay still. Then he saw the victorious snake looking round. He went and plucked a leaf and came in his mouth and stuck it into the mouth of the snake that was lying still, and immediately that snake was revived. So this hunter killed the snakes, and he looked at the leaf and he immediately could identify it and made some medicine out of it, you know. And to this day, you can be bitten by 10 cobras. All you do is you lick a little bit of it, and you have the antidote to the poison. And so a lot of hunters, whenever they go to the forest, they always have this. If they accidentally step on a snake, they immediately lick it, and that neutralizes the poison. Now, these are people who were educated, and education simply means the ability to cope with your environment. So they knew their environment. I'll show you this, this plant here. We call this abrototo. Let me get a, yeah. You see, we call this abrototo. And we always grow this in the fence around the house. If you have a cat, if you are a cat, say in the kitchen, you just walk to the fence and pluck the abrototo and let the juice fall on the wound, and it immediately stops bleeding. Immediately. This is it, abrototo. That's how we call it. In fact, that's why I put it in this fence. because I'm trying to do what our ancestors did. When they built fences around their houses, they would go and cut trees that are medicinal and put them right in the house, you see, so that if there's an accident or something, there's always a particular tree. I have it down here, not in the fence. Now, this is always in the fence in the house. And when you see a pregnant goat or sheep, you see, chewing the bark of this tree, you know it's about to deliver, because there is something in the bark of that tree which prevents excessive bleeding after delivery. And then when the placenta is delayed, they will pound this medicine, the bark of the tree, give some to the woman to drink, and insert the other, and within half an hour, the placenta will come out by itself. And this was right in the home. Of course, they have lived here for millions of years, so at least one would expect that they would know a little bit about the environment. They knew a lot, but when the Europeans came, they felt, oh, these people didn't know anything.
You were talking about honey.
Yeah. We use, you know, our medicine men have a lot of knowledge. Now, for years they've been using honey for treating ulcers and wounds, deep cuts. And there was a doctor in Nigeria who decided to just pursue this and find out what is in this honey. And he subjected the honey to scientific investigation and found that honey is hygroscopic. In other words, it absorbs moisture. And so by applying honey on an open wound, the honey absorbs the moisture and deprives the bacteria of food, and they just die. And the wound, the skin recovers. And when he published this article, you know, he was hailed as the great man who discovered it, but he didn't discover it. It was the so-called witch doctors who made the discovery millions and millions of years ago. And 2 years ago, there was a Chinese doctor who came out with an ointment, an ointment for burns. And they showed pictures of the burned skin and the skin that had been restored, and you couldn't see any scar. And he wouldn't disclose the contents. Only one thing he would mention, and he said it contained honey. And you see, Africa, China, we know this already. And there are some trees, one tree, for instance, that we use as a chewing stick for cleaning the teeth. It does not only prevent tooth decay and keep the mouth fresh, but there's some alkaloid in that tree that reverses a sickle cell. You see, now you would ask, well, who taught these people? Well, for years we've had, or for centuries, you know, people in the tropics, Africans, have had the sickle cell disease. And so somebody made that discovery thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, that there was something in this chewing stick which was able to reverse a sickle cell. And when the doctors in Ibadan, in Nigeria, came upon this, and they were taught by a herbalist, I've met that herbalist before, they extracted this alkaloid and gave it to sickle cell patients, and all of them were able to go out of crisis. Now, so when people got up in the morning and were just brushing or cleaning their teeth, they were also at the same time taking care of their sickle cell disease. Isn't this marvelous? It's incredible. It's incredible. And all this knowledge is ours. You see, only we don't know what our forebears did. Now, this tree, for instance, is also, it makes a good chewing stick. And it helps to clean the teeth and keep the mouth fresh. So when you go to the farm, you know, the farmer takes a piece of this and he removes the bark, you know, and immediately begins to chew it, and it tastes very good, you know. And it is medicinal too. Takes care of, cleans the system, cleans the liver and so on, you know. You chew it, I'll let you try it later. It's very tasty, you see. Very tasty. And our folks know all these. They know all these things. You know? Been doing a lot of research. And every now and then I tell him, you see, we were not meant to die. We only die out of ignorance. That's all. You know? We only die out of ignorance, because, well, we don't know. But all these things here have immediate medicinal value. The papaya, you know, I mean the leaves, great medicine, great. Yeah, you see, these dried leaves, you boil them and you put something in it, some of these xintia, it regulates your blood pressure.
Papaya leaf?
This, I'm telling you. If we say that everything was revealed to the Hebrews, we are saying that God didn't care for the other people who lived in the world. How can we say that about God? We can't. We are making God into a very limited, partial being who only prefers some people to others. No, I lay claim on God as much as anybody else, because our ancestors had a name for God and had God's ways. I mean, who but, let me explain this to you, bring me a knife. Who but Africans would have a name for God that says the plantain leaf, large enough to shelter the entire world? Now, you have these plantains here, you know, and when you go to the farm, this was before umbrellas were invented. You go to the farm and it rains. So what do? You cut a plantain leaf. You cut a plantain leaf like this. And you hold it above your head, you see, and you don't get wet. And so out of this experience, our ancestors called God the plantain leaf large enough to shelter the entire world. In other words, under this one shelter, this one plantain leaf, all human beings have shelter. It tells you immediately that our ancestors did not have an idea of an exclusive God. They had an idea of an inclusive God. Under this one plantain leaf, all humanity has shelter. What an incredible idea. And this came out of our experiences. So here you have a plantain leaf, and when I tell you that our ancestors said God is a plantain leaf large enough to shelter the entire world, here you go. Now this is a palm tree, and you can see here the palm fruit. You know, you can see the palm fruit. This one is young, and when it's ripe, you see, you cut it, and you use the nuts either for soup, and then the kernels, you use the kernel for making oil. This is a very useful tree for us. You can tap palm wine from it. You use the branches for building purposes. You use the inside of the branch for making baskets, because it's very supple, you can bend it, it doesn't break. So you use the inside for making baskets. And you can even use the trunk for building, use it like timber. And you see, our people used everything in their environment for building, the stones, the soils, everything. And this is a cinnamon tree. You see, and from the back, and you can smell this, cinnamon, yeah. And you can chew the bark, which is very, very tasty, you know. And we use the leaves even in cooking soup, and it becomes very, very, very fragrant. Now, right behind me here is an incredible medicinal plant. I don't know the botanical name, but we call it xintia. And we put it in a lot of medicines. It's very aromatic, and it flowers, it seasons fruits twice a year. I want to begin by saying that the same questions human beings everywhere have asked. How did the world come into being? How did death become part of our experience? What happens to us when we die? Is there a destiny to this world, to life, and so on? All these questions were asked by our forebears, and the answers that were given came entirely out of our own experiences here. Oh, there is the hawk that I talked about. You see that hawk there? As it flies aloft and says, everything that God created is good. There it goes.
I don't see him. I see him, but I don't see him in the camera.
We'll get him. We'll get him.
Okay, now you can talk.
Yeah. You see, so we put it into the mouth of the hawk, that all that God created is good. There goes the hawk. Now, our religion is based on our worldview, how we understand the world to be. We believe in our religion that this world was created by God and that the world is sustained by God, and for that reason that we don't have any idea in our religion that the world will come to an end, because God sustains it. And we believe that God is essentially a spirit, not a human being, you know, and that's why there are no temples or shrines or physical representations, because God is a spirit. We have a proverb: if you want to speak to God, speak to the winds. And like the winds, God is everywhere, God is invisible. And our religion also has to do with our sense of morality, you see, because religion teaches us how to live with each other, how to live with our environment. The religion relates to the environment. You find that here in Ghana or in Africa, trees and rivers and lakes and the sea and all these things come into our religiosity, because for us, God does not need a temple. The whole universe is the temple of God. You see, we have a piece on the drum, which we play, the drum language, and the piece says, the path crosses the river, and the river crosses the path. Which is the elder? In other words, which came before which? And the drummer answers, we made the path to meet the river. The river is from long ago. By merely looking at nature, our ancestors were driven to the source, to the architect of nature. The path is like the temple or the cathedral. We built it, we know, but we didn't make the river. So all the things we made, we know. And the things we did not make tell us about who made the river. Now there's a very important tree in the distance, which I want you to see. And we call it Cheng Cheng, and that is the tree from which our ancestors made the bark cloth. They would strip the bark and beat it, and it will stretch. And that's what they used for making cloth. So we call it Cheng Cheng. They use it in making bark cloth. You could see some bark cloth at the museum. So it's a very important tree. I had a big one here, but it was threatening, so we cut it. But this one will remain on the farm for posterity, for people to come and see what our ancestors used to make the clothes they used to make. And then down here I have some oranges. Unfortunately, let's see if we can. Then we have this type of orange is called ponkam. Can you pull it down? No, it won't break. Yeah. And this is called ponkam. And it's a combination of tangerine and orange. And it's very tasty. Very tasty. So you see, we live in a land of abundance. Now in the orange season, I don't buy oranges. I stopped drinking water. Last year, during the season, between August and December, I never drank water. I only drank orange juice at home, 7, 8 glasses a day. The wars. But there are so many places in Africa where there's no starvation. Of course, you see, the media is not interested in a place like this, where there's abundance. Starvation is not the only reality in Africa, there's abundance. Look at this. Bananas, you know, oranges, avocados, coconuts, you know, papaya. The media is not interested in this. They're interested in the problem, to give a picture of Africa as a problem area. All the reading you did, all that you saw, did not prepare you to, you never thought you would find a peaceful, well, we're in Africa, this is peaceful. But you know, nobody in America would believe there's any place in Africa like this. It's all Somalia. And so, but look, this is a very peaceful place. And some of us are just as surprised, you know, to hear of these conflicts. Well, what's the matter with them? We live in Africa, yeah. But look at us here, you know.
Can we talk a little bit about the Akan culture?
Yeah. Well, you see, Egyptian culture, Egyptian civilization had its origins in the headwaters of the Nile. And for millions and millions of years, humankind began in Africa, and then as they discovered or invented these implements and discovered fire and began to control the environment, they started to move out of Africa and first went to Asia, and then after the ice had melted, they went to Europe. And so it all began here. But one can still see some interesting connections between ancient Egypt and what we have here. Because the idea of the monarch and the way our chiefs, particularly in the Akan areas, dress and all the regalia and the pomp and so on, all these things remind you of ancient Egypt. And the connections are, it's not funny. The snake plays a very important role, you know, and you find the snake in Egypt, ancient Egypt, and so many things. And it tells you clearly that Egypt was just the flowering of African civilization. It wasn't anything foreign to Africa. It's the Europeans who just wanted to take Egypt out of Africa. But the Egyptians themselves knew that they came from the headwaters of the Nile. Thank God the Nile doesn't flow from the Mediterranean into Africa, but flows from the Africa into the Mediterranean. They knew this, they acknowledged it or recognized it. It's only these people who write history to please themselves. But history has no favorites. And you see, in spite of the effort made to cover up history, it's still pushing up. There's truth there and covered it up. It will come out by itself. You won't have to dig for it. And look at all the information that is coming out from the belly of the earth about ancient Africa. We thought there was nothing there, but it's coming. And we're going to see more and more as the century wears on. Now we have this special, this is also very medicinal. We call it prekese. And you use it, if you make soup, you put some in, and it flavors the soup. But this is also, this combined with some other plant, is used by our medicine men for high blood pressure. And they call it prekese because it makes noise. You can hear the noise, hear the sound. Yeah, this is kind of wet, but still.
You were telling me earlier that our ancestors preserved food. How did they preserve it?
Well, you know, for instance, if they wanted to preserve food overnight, you know, they'll put a piece of charcoal in it, in the soup or in the stew, and it would stay exactly the same.
Is this something they just started, or is this...
Oh no, they've known this for millions of years. The question I've always asked is, well, why didn't those people who are supposed not to know anything, why did they put a bone or a stone, but charcoal? For millions of years, our ancestors have known that charcoal has some properties. One, charcoal absorbs odors. And then charcoal has a lethal effect on bacteria. And to this day, you know, you go to the hospital when you have food poisoning or something, you know, they give you charcoal to chew. And our ancestors have known this for millions of years. See? So it meant that they knew something. You know, they were adventurous. That's why they made discoveries. Otherwise, they couldn't have lived here if they didn't know anything. If they didn't know what food to eat, if they didn't know they had to exercise their bodies, or if their medicines were not good. The Europeans who claimed to have discovered Africa would only have come to find forests and animals with no human beings.
How did the African treat the European when he came?
Well, you see, the African is a person who is, as a result of his upbringing, even to this day, knows that the other person is a friend and not an enemy. In Europe, every other person is an enemy, you know. And so when they saw the Europeans, they welcomed them with open arms. They were not hostile and showed them hospitality. But the European, with very little culture, misunderstood, misread the signs. They thought, oh, these people are afraid of us. They think we are better than they. They see what they're giving us. But that's hospitality. Hospitality is very much part of our tradition. You see, a person comes to you and you give him a place to stay. You give him food to eat. If he needs to farm, you give him land to farm. He doesn't own it, but he must eat. So he has a piece of land on which to farm. The fruit of the land belongs to him, but the land does not belong to him. Even those of us here don't own the land. We believe the land belongs to our ancestors. And our idea of the family is that the family is made up of the dead, the living, and the yet unborn. So those of us living here are only caretakers. We're supposed to hold it for those who are coming. And our ancestors taught us that there will always be people coming after us. That's why we took thought to the future. So when Mbiti writes his book, African Religions and Philosophy, and says, oh, Africans have no idea of the future is nothing but, doesn't go beyond 6 months to 2 years, then the Europeans are happy. But if the future is 6 months to 2 years, why would our ancestors tell us not to sell the land? Because people are coming. Were they coming within 6 months to 2 years? No. So that doesn't make sense. That's a complete distortion of the African concept of time. Time is so vast that, you know, we can calculate it. Anybody who can count time, 5 million, 6 million, it's not just, it's being unrealistic. It's just taking a very partial, truncated view of time. Time is just endless. Time has no end. And of course, you see, when you read all these eschatological things in the Bible, and you think, oh, well, the world is drawing to an end and so on. Well, that idea of the future as the culmination of everything is not in tune with nature. That futuristic orientation came out of the experience of the Hebrew people. Abraham was told to leave his land to a land that God would show him. So he was looking forward to seeing that land. It was in the future. They were in Egypt as slaves. They were looking forward to getting out of slavery. They got to the Red Sea. They were waiting to get back across the river, the sea. And they went into exile. They were waiting to get back. So the Jews have been a people who have always been in waiting. And so this built into Judaism a futuristic orientation, which was unique until it was duplicated by Christianity and Islam. But those of us who have been here, we've lived here for millions of years, and our concept of time is based on nature. Nature renews itself. And so time is in the form of a circle. It goes and comes. It goes and comes. It never has an end. It's not an expendable commodity that becomes exhausted after a while. No. And so you find that people who have grown out of such an environment with such a concept of time are very stable, they're not anxious. But people who believe time is running out become rapacious, greedy because they know there won't be any more. And this is true to the European character of grabbing and amassing because, well, it's going to be finished. Well, it's not going to be finished. We think we can destroy the world, but nature will never be destroyed. Nature has within itself the processes of renewal. And those who doubt this can look into the temperate climate and see that there's not a year without a winter. And there's not a year without a spring. Nature renews itself. Summer, fall, and the cycle begins again. It's a cycle. It's not a straight line that's going to stop. It's not going to stop.
And we got nothing between the
Roots to make medicine. Yeah.
Who digs all this up?
Oh, people. Because you see here, that's been our nature. You know, you go through there, you need medicine, well, you can come and take it. Because, you know, you need to survive, you need to save somebody, you know. So the idea of private property as such, I mean, if this were Europe, this would be trespassers. You can shoot them. They pluck a leaf from your farm. But we allow them because, you know, they need to survive. They need to take care of somebody who is sick. And this is the only place they can find the medicine. Well, of course, if they take things from here to sell, that's wrong. But if they take to use, then we let them. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the most fantastic trees in the whole world. This is a silk cotton tree, and it must be more than, oh, God knows, 100, 200, 300 years old. See the roots just shooting up. And this provides shelter for animals, you know. The animals can just sleep in the holes here. As you can see here, come and see this one here. It's just fantastic. So maybe an animal has kids, you know, and it can put some leaves here and nurse them right here.
Yes.
You know, and look at the size of that. Fantastic. And take it up all the way up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is fantastic.
Yeah. The bottom to the top, huh?
Mm.
Yeah, that would be nice.